Good afternoon and welcome once again to Aalto University's public lecture series, The Future of Technology and Finland. And this is now the fourth Tuesday that we are having these lectures, and I have to say that I have been very happy to see so many participants following these lectures, and as well as our excellent technical team has created it YouTube videos of every lecture, so those lectures can also be watched afterwards when needed. And you can find the right links to those YouTube videos in the internet page of this Internet Forum public lecture series. And once again, Juho Kaivosoja will put to chat the code for our students, which is the one that you should use to show your presence during this lecture. We have two very interesting lectures today once again. First of all, Katja Toropainen, who is the founder of Inklusiiv, will give a lecture, and the title is Why Diversity and Inclusion Matter in Technology and How to Advance it. Very much looking forward to Katja's lecture. After Katja, we have Kirsi Kokko, who is our second lecturer this evening. Kirsi is the head of Digital Trust Program, very experienced person in these issues, and she works in Business Finland. And Kirsi's title is Digital Trust for Safe, Secure and Prosperous Societies. But let's go to the lectures. Katja, can you hear me?
Hi Jarno, can you hear me? I can hear you well.
Loud and clear. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited about this evening.
It seems that when I'm looking the background, what you are having, you have more sunshine than we are having here in Otaniemi.
Well, I don't know. Looks like it's a bit dark here as well.
Excellent. Hey, very nice to have you, Katja. Could you a little bit share about your background? Why you are interested in technology?
Well, first, before I started Inklusiiv, I was working at Slush, startup and tech event Slush, and I was there in the leadership team for 2 years. And during those years, I got to follow as my day job what's happening in the global startup and technology industry. And that's really when I found more about these topics.
That's great. We have heard excellent lectures so far, and we are looking forward for yours and Kirsi's lectures today. We have been discussing about different technologies and their probable implications to Finland. Do you have a favorite technology, what you are especially following at the moment?
I've been actually following what's happening in the fintech and crypto and even Bitcoin space. I feel it's interesting. And even though there's a lot of different cryptocurrencies and a lot of a bit shady stuff maybe as well, I think it's important for us to know what's going on in that technology space, and learning about blockchain is really interesting.
What would you, my last question, then I let you to have your lecture, but what is your best prediction at the moment when we will get rid of the physical money here in Finland?
Tough question. I don't really like making predictions, but I think that we should be paying more attention into the space of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and what's happening there. I think that the banking system in the Nordics works so well that it's easy to just ignore completely what's happening in the development of some cryptocurrencies. So I would really like us to maybe pay more attention to that and learn more about what's really going on there.
Absolutely. Hey, very nice to have you here, Katja. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. So thanks so much for inviting me here. I'm excited to spending the next 40 minutes or so talking about diversity and inclusion and why it matters in technology, and also a bit about how to advance it. I'm going to still share a bit more about my background as well. I'm founder of Inklusiiv, and before Inklusiiv, I worked at Slush. But if you haven't heard of us yet, it's not a surprise because we're still a pretty young community founded last year back in 2019. Our mission is to advance diversity and inclusion, D&I, in working life through our different community activities. And we share knowledge, research, and best practices about these topics. So if you're looking for more bits and pieces about diversity and inclusion, also you can find a data bank on our website that we'll be developing. And next, still about why I'm here talking about technology and D&I and how I have been really learning about these topics is during my past years, 2 fantastic years spending in the leadership team of Slush Startup and Tech event. I was there running the content program and speaker operations, which meant that I was spending plenty of time in Silicon Valley, London, Stockholm, meeting up with tech entrepreneurs, investors, and figuring out what's happening in different technologies and what we should be paying attention into. And during those years, what really struck me is that abroad, I was seeing all the time more discussions and research coming up about diversity and inclusion topics. And when I quit working at Slush almost 2 years back, I noticed that we didn't yet talk that much about D&I in technology here in Finland in the technology space. So that's why I really started working on these topics. And during the next like 30 minutes or so, I will tell you why I believe that diversity and inclusion is a solution to actually some of these challenges here, why it can advance talent attraction in Finland and in the technology industry, why it can help us build better tech products and also more successful businesses. But I hope to also raise some interesting data points or ideas that actually also help us to think about these matters. How much do they matter, and should we do more about these topics? Obviously, I personally think this is a major future trend in technology, and following what's happening abroad, I'm very convinced that the discussions and research and data will only increase about these matters. But let's get into it and start with definitions. First, let's go through what we at Inklusiiv mean by diversity and inclusion. After that, let's spend some time on thinking why D&I builds better organizations, and after that, why we are as humans and in the technology industry, why are we struggling with these topics? What are some barriers that we need to overcome, and why it's such a challenge to build diverse and inclusive organizations and tech industry? And then lastly, what we can do about it. These are the definitions we use. Diversity and simplicity just means differences. And our different experiences really shape how we see the world and what kind of experiences we might have in working life and what kind of technology products or technologies we are excited about. And there's various different kind of differences, demographic factors like age, gender, nationality, and various others. But then there's also experiential factors. And that can be anything like about our life experiences, where we have been living, with what kind of people we've been spending time with, and also what kind of schools we've gone to, or anything else. And these also shape how we view the world. And then there's also cognitive factors. And diversity doesn't work without inclusion. Diverse workplaces cannot work without inclusive work cultures. So basically, shortly, inclusion means fostering a work culture where all individuals, regardless of diversity factors, are treated fairly, respectfully, and have equal access to opportunities and resources. And some key aspects of inclusion might include, for example, psychological safety and also a sense of belonging. Why do we really need to talk about this? We need to still talk about this because these are crucial elements to take into account while building tech products, tech companies, and developing different kind of technologies, as we later get to see. And these are also important factors, as fostering inclusion helps us to also build more equal and inclusive organizations and workplaces. Some of you might have heard this before. It's a classic quote and explains why diversity doesn't work without inclusion, and why diverse workplaces don't work without inclusive work cultures. It's by Werner Myers, who's a famous DEI expert working at Netflix. And she's saying, diversity is being invited to the party, while inclusion is being asked to dance. So now you know the basic definitions, and now we are perhaps on the same page with these. But let's still bring one aspect of inclusion to the topics. And this research comes directly from the tech industry. Psychological safety is an important part of inclusion, and it means that team members feel safe and can take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. And the topic of psychological safety has become all the time more well known since years back, when giant tech company Google had an intensive research project where they wanted to find out what are the things that are common in all of their highest performing teams. And perhaps to their own surprise as well, they found out that one of the most important common things was psychological safety. So they found out that fostering psychological safety makes also teams perform better. And I believe also, and as we'll later see, that it also helps us to build better technologies and better technologies and products. Let's spend a bit of time focusing on why DEI is important. And after that, we take a look at how we're doing with these topics in the tech industry and why it's a bit of a struggle. Many research and statistics tell us a bit about how DEI can actually help us build better teams and better organizations. There's all the time more data and research, and has already for years been, for example, McKinsey has been for many years in a row been publishing research how more gender diverse and ethnically diverse groups tend to perform better. And this was the first year that they also put much more emphasis on inclusion as well. And they stated in the research that they see that already diverse groups should focus much more on inclusion. As we have learned, diversity doesn't work without inclusion, and the studies, for example, this one by Deloitte, show that the case for an inclusive culture is strong as well. As we can see, inclusive cultures are twice as likely to meet or exceed financial targets, 3 times as likely to be high performing, and 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile, and perhaps even 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. Interesting research indeed, because I feel as well still that inclusion and what it actually means is still pretty vague, and it's not that well known. It's still kind of upcoming topic that we all are learning about. What does it actually mean, and how can you actually advance it if you want to? But D&I are not only about that. During the past years, we have seen that sustainability as part of business strategies has been rising all the time, and this can be seen in the technology industry as well. Sustainability is most often linked to environmental aspects, but there's also the social aspects, and D&I is directly linked to sustainability topics as well. So D&I has also been becoming, alongside with sustainability, all the time more vital part of business strategies. And it's directly linked to many UN Sustainable Development Goals too, as you can see here. So it's also exciting contribution to the world from that perspective as well. Now we've been talking about some research and topics, how it's good for several things or can be good. But what if we don't pay attention to that? What can happen if we don't advance D&I? Here's a couple of cases from for example, from the technology world and from the product development side of things. For example, Google Photos is a famous case where the AI wasn't able to differentiate Black people from gorillas. And when we rely more on certain technologies like AI and voice recognition and different algorithms, there's a real risk that these might be biased and discriminate against groups of people based on their gender or based on their skin color. So for example, it's a real risk, and it's been happening that certain like AI has been discriminating against women and non-white people. And if we like track or think about why is this happening, many people believe, and it makes sense that due to the lack of diversity in product development teams and in the technology industry, if there's less diverse people developing these technologies and these products, it can be more difficult to take into account this kind of topics and build more inclusive products that actually work better for all the people. And also many big tech companies nowadays are struggling with this kind of cases of toxic, sexist or racist work environments. And nowadays, many of them are actually pouring a lot of money into the D&I work in the hope of solving some of these issues. But also changing an existing culture demands a lot of resources. So there are these kind of cases happening in the tech, and these can be seen as some of the risks also associated with these topics. And yeah, I would like to also address that there's a million different kind of cases where we can think about these possible pros and cons of D&I in the tech industry, whether it's teamwork or whether it's the development of different kind of products, like who do we have in the table developing in products and what are we not noticing. And this is a really challenging topic, but why are we still so struggling with this, and why is this a challenge for us all humans? There's a lot of different kind of obstacles to inclusion, including unconscious biases, privileges, representation, and various different kind of topics. And today we can take a look at unconscious biases and how it might affect. And I'm sure we also all like to believe that when we're working or building technologies or whatever, that we're rational and making the best possible decisions. But that's not even how our brain exactly works. So many of our decisions that we do in our daily life are unconscious. So our brains are really good at categorizing information really fast, and it helps us to navigate the daily world full of information. But it also makes us to categorize knowledge so fast that we unconsciously often form stereotypes. It might be stereotypes of different people or about various different topics. And I really liked how in the previous lecture, Jaana Tapanainen-Thies was showing the quote by Anainin about how we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And I think this also links to the topic of us individuals and our experiences and our biases. For example, when I've been speaking, I've been asking a lot from the audience. Now I'm not able to do it, but asking from the audience, what kind of people come to their mind when they think of CEOs or technology founders or coders or developers. And most of the people are thinking of men or even white men. So it's also one stereotype that we do have, and I have it too myself. Who are these people? They are coders because still in 1940s and 50s in the US, software engineering actually used to be a women's profession. But since those times, a lot of things have been happening, and there's a lot of different things that have been happening that has led to the current situations where we are nowadays with the tech industry. But a couple of things that we can spot from the history of tech are, for example, that since the invention of personal computers, the advertising industry, consisting of mostly men, decided back in the days to start market those devices to men. And then boys were more likely to learn about computers from their dads. And later on, Hollywood started producing movies about the coding culture, about nerd guys coding. And it became part of the culture. And there is nothing wrong about this one. But as we know, actually role models and seeing different kind of people in the industry also might affect who goes there. So culture and how we think about things might actually also influence who are joining the tech industry in the first place. And there's a lot of different topics in the history of tech as well that might actually help us to understand the structures nowadays and where we are nowadays with these topics. But we don't have time to go to that. So let's continue. And learning about the history of tech is really, really interesting. There's been a lot of different interesting points, as I'm sure many of you also know. But what is the situation nowadays in Europe? These are statistics by the State of European Tech report published at Slush in 2019, 92% of all capital in European tech went to all-men founding teams. So what does this mean? It basically means that the next big tech companies, the next Spotifys of Europe are coming probably from this pool of companies. So we already know that it might not be that diverse either. And on the level of other underrepresented groups in tech, we know that the statistics are even lower than that, as this is just about gender. And then just recently published a study that was just published by Accenture and Girls Who Code show, for example, that 50% of women in tech leave the industry by the age of 35, and 37% of them cite that non-inclusive work culture has been the primary reason. And this is just gender data, so I would emphasize that we also need much more data and knowledge about these statistics for other minorities as well, like gender and sexual minorities, ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, just so we know how the things are. But we know that there are some challenges when we have this kind of statistics, and there's a lot more research about this as well. And in Finland, we often still think that D&I is just about gender, but it's not. It's a much more complex topic. But the good thing is that advancing inclusion, when advancing inclusion, we can advance everyone in the workplace and also in the technology industry. But here in Finland, we are in the Nordics really equal, right? So how are things here? We have many things really well, but we have also some things that we could advance still and make progress at. Finland is, by research, there's racism in working life too. Finland is one of the most, the professions are really gendered in Europe. So Finland is one of the top OECD countries in how gendered the professions are. And this might lead to a case where we have so strong stereotypes that, for example, men work in engineering and women work in care, that it might only accelerate things further. And the worst things about this can be that it can actually limit someone from finding their dream job. And also close to 2/3 of Finnish girls reject future career in science and technology. And I feel like this is really, really alarming. So basically, if we agree that there are still some things where we can do progress, what kind of things could we take into account, or how could we advance this topic somehow? And I believe that inclusion is one way to advance everyone's place and also make tech industry much better. And it's not just a state of mind. It's great. There's also a lot of practical things we can take into account and start doing right away. And advancing it also requires concrete actions. And before jumping into this topic, I would also like to address that these topics are going to be forever a struggle for all of us. And no organization or no one can be perfect about this. We all have biases, and it's really really difficult to be perfect about anything. But so the mindset about advancing D&I believe should be about constantly doing, failing, and then learning. And it's a journey that is this forever ongoing. And no one yet has all the answers, and no organization or no industry has yet nailed it. it's not possible due to our biases. But what is exciting, in my opinion, is that there's a lot to learn from there, and there's a lot of practical stuff we can already take into action in our daily lives. And if we're thinking about this from the context of organizations, for example, from the context of tech companies or from university where new tech students are studying, there's various different kind of areas where we can do really concrete stuff about D&I. We can develop our HR practices and processes. We can develop culture and values. And also, for example, in the technology development, we can take accessibility better into account. And there's actually a lot in doing that as well. There's also a new topic that is kind of becoming trendy, that is inclusive leadership. And by Googling, you can find more information about that. But I think like still we're in the phase, in many places, we're still in the phase of awareness building and education about these topics, and really like learning and discussing and sharing ideas and listening to each other. There's one, I think, inspiring quote by Brené Brown. She was speaking at Nordic Business Forum in the fall of 2019 here in Helsinki. And she said that if you cannot talk about gender, ethnicity, and other different aspects of D&I, you cannot lead in 5 years. If you're not having difficult conversations about hard topics that make you uncomfortable, that is the definition of privilege. And this is something I see a lot happening abroad, and also a lot more happening in the technology industry as well. So I would encourage us all also to discuss more about these challenges here in Finland as well. And I've seen this, for example, in the startup scene. I've seen this topic rising. Before ending this short presentation, here's still a few steps that can help get started. If any one of you gets excited about these matters and feels that it's important to do something about this or learn more. A few steps to get started are starting the conversation, learning more about these topics, and raising awareness about it. Then also we can all learn about our unconscious biases that are guiding our decision making at work, or guiding how we recruit, like what kind of people we tend to recruit, and then we can hire culture ads, not culture fits. In the tech industry, there has been this myth that one should hire culture fits, but nowadays we know that it might actually lead to a phase where our unconscious biases overrule us, and it might lead to the case where we're just hiring people who are like us, but not even the best ones. But culture ads means someone who shares the values, but also can bring something new to the company culture. Then a couple more things. Diversity of product development teams. As we saw with some cases like building AI, it can be important to have diverse people taking a look at those and developing products, so we can make sure those work for all people. And there's also a lot to do in terms of inclusion in brands and visuals and communications to make sure that we communicate in an inclusive way. Lastly, just believe that we should all advance inclusion, because otherwise the diversity will walk away. And why do I talk about these topics is that I want to imagine a future where tech products work for all people and where all people can work in tech. Thanks everyone for listening. And
thank you very much, Katja. I have to say that this is very topical issue what we have, and you know much better. We have been discussing in Finland as well, in other countries for a while. And I also always like when a lecturer doesn't only describe the situation or the phenomena, but also brings in a good way the solutions, that what should be done, how we are going to proceed with this one, and how we are able to get better result. And I am also very happy that this is one way to raise awareness, like you mentioned, when you are available for this lecture. Very good. Hey, if you would be in our government and you have all the power to change this issue, what would be the number one action point what you would carry out?
Adding diversity inclusion trainings to all levels of education, and also ensuring that we pay into account, pay like attention into the current structures as well, so that, for example, in the technology industry as well, we could learn a lot from sociology and learn about like structures, like what has been happening in the history that has taken us here. Why are we here? Why is why does Finland has so gendered professions? And if we would under structures better and kind of systemic institutional matters, we could also perhaps find the root problems and start tackling these and ensure that everyone can, when they're at school or at university, at work life, that they can find their dream jobs and really join, for example, have more diverse people joining tech industry and also feeling good about working there.
Excellent point. Hey, Carolina Meia Lopez, you have a very good point in chat. Would you like to raise this by yourself to Katja?
Yeah, sure. Actually, Katja, was thinking the other day that diversity and inclusion policies are important part of this mindset change. Actually, the other day I was thinking that those people who ask why D&I policies are in place are not the target of these policies, because I always find myself smiling when I see a job offer or a university policy or whatever that says we're inclusive, we're diverse, we encourage, we do not discriminate. And I think it's an important thing that companies have this, even though those people, that what I said is that those policies are not that for them, do not notice that, but I do, because they're for me.
Yeah, indeed. And the challenge is also that we cannot just say that our workplace is inclusive if we haven't actually asked everyone, or if we haven't gathered the data, and still it might be exclusive to some people who haven't ever joined it. So I think we should all just be committed to developing inclusion and being better and that and also thinking about that thing, like who are not in the table when we're developing DEI policies, because as we know, there are so many different diversity aspects. So it's also difficult that, like, we should also pay attention to whose voice is heard when decisions are made, and whose voice might not be even in our team or even in our organization. That was really good point.
Jere Kaiku writes, excellent delivery, Katja. Direct feedback. to you. Nan wants to ask, how do you practice inclusion at Inklusiiv? Please give concrete examples.
Yeah, for example, one way is that there's a lot of this kind of tools, DEI tools that measure inclusion in organizations. And before, when I was working at Slush, we used Beacon tool there. And now we're also at Inklusiiv, we're trying out different kind of tools as we like no one cannot just kind of expect that everyone feels inclusive. Also, what we are doing ourselves, like what we have already been doing ourselves, is learning a lot by different DEI experts about different topics like anti-racism, because, for example, structural racism is still very much in also in our society, in working place. And I believe that we need to be all the time committed to learning about different aspects and from different kind of DEI experts, and then taking those practicalities into the use in the workplace, and in the sense of also showing vulnerability myself. Like, we haven't either figured things out. We're small and we're all the time learning more, but no one is perfect at this. So I think we all just need to also kind of be ready to admit that we need to be humble and be all the time striving for learning more and doing better. But we have every day and every year just still so much to learn more about this and strive for better. So we're never going to be ready.
Very good. Anirudha Pandey, you have actually two different questions. Please ask one of your questions.
Yes. So my question was that, like, what's the contribution of the market environment in our country towards the diversity and inclusiveness that the various companies experience in their workplace?
What is the do you mean like what is the impact of country to the company culture?
Yeah.
So I believe, like, it looks like, and I believe that it has a huge impact, like also what kind of demographics and what kind of culture we have. For example, in Finland, when we're starting out companies here, and there's a lot of great things like having not much hierarchy, for example, in Finnish culture, but also in a sense there's challenges, for example, due to the fact that we have been here like on the side of Europe. So we don't, as a country, we already have all the time much more diverse demographics, but we're still pretty young country, and we have actually here enormously lot to still learn about accepting people's differences and working with diverse people. That is not exactly like what you asked. I haven't myself dig deep into that matter, like how much it affects the company culture, but I would expect that it affects a lot.
Very good. Hey, there are a few other questions also in chat. If you have time, Katja, to answer those. But I will take the final question before going to the next lecture. This is from Roope Antila. Roope, would you like to ask your question?
Where would you draw the line between expertise and diversity and inclusion cases? For example, when a company is hiring new people, and what is or should be valued higher?
Expertise, of course. We should always be hiring people by their expertise. But something that is not yet that much discussed about is how also the language of the job post, the brand of the company, and the existing team might already influence who are the people even applying for that job. So it might be that we're actually already, before we're even starting the interviews, that we're limiting the applicant pool without knowing it. So advancing inclusion in brand and building more diverse team might actually help to attract more diverse talent. And then there's another challenge of biases. So because we all are biases and we have a tendency to favor people who are similar to us, this might actually make it a big challenge for us to even know who's the best person to hire. So it might also help to develop recruiting processes and have diverse teams in interviews and have structured question sets so that we can at least try to dismantle these biases that we might have, so that we would even be able to hire the best and the most experienced people for the role. So definitely expertise, but this is even a much more complex topic, like how to even get the diverse people to apply in the first place.
Very good. Once again, thank you, Katja, for an excellent lecture, an excellent point what you brought. And if you have time, like I mentioned, please look at the chat.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for great questions, and thank you for inviting me here. This was a pleasure.
This was our pleasure. Thank you. And Kirsi Kokko from Business Finland, you are the head of Digital Trust Program. Good evening, Kirsi.
Good evening, Jarno, and let me start also the video.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. It's nice to be here with you guys.
I can see that you are not in the office, or then you have an excellent, nice-looking office.
I'm not in the office. We are working remotely, and I'm enjoying it at the moment still.
Very good. Did you have a chance to listen to Katja's lecture?
I did. It was very interesting and very refreshing to hear something from a young person who is so experienced in the matter.
Absolutely. And I know you have excellent background and well experienced also internationally. Have you noticed that those topics what Katja brought up, you have been discussing internationally as well?
Yeah, I think we see it especially among maybe networks of women. Quite often this topic has been raised that the diversity from a much kind of wider perspective even, and coming from ICT and digital background, so it has been fairly intensively dominated by smart men. And we are trying to get girls more joining, and also from various cultures people joining. So I think we still have things to do.
The other question before I let you start your lecture, from the international point of view, how big issue is the trust issue in technology and, for example, cybersecurity at the moment? What would you say?
I think we are starting to understand more and more that this is not only about technical things. It's about regulation, it's about processes, it's about the role of the persons. And it's really hard to forecast the world and where we are going. We suddenly have situations like the pandemic at the moment, and our systems are tried out. So I think people are waking up to the kind of diversity of the trust. And Finland has been really seen as a model country because we are tackling very well many of these aspects. So a couple of years ago, when I was still working with the Invest In, activities in the ICT team, I was wondering that we get so many questions from smart countries and societies, like for instance Japan, about this matter. So what are you, Finland, doing right? So clearly there was interest toward some of the things we are doing here.
Very good. I have personally noticed for a while that, especially internationally, well, you know, I work in the security field, but more and more when we are talking about security, we are actually discussing about the trust. And I think one of the key questions, which I believe is becoming more and more important, is that to whom you can really trust. For example, you know very well this competition, for example, between United States and China at the moment.
Yep.
That's very strongly, partly at least, a trust question.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hey, very nice to have you here. Please, floor is yours.
Excellent. So let's see. We get started by sharing the presentation. So the topic for us today, and for me, has been, and sorry, I'm still juggling a little bit with the controls here. So, is the digital trust for safe, secure, and prosperous societies. And it's really a pleasure to be here today with you, Altos, and other listeners. This is a topic which has multiple sides, and I'm covering that from a bit wider perspective than only from the technology, which is today one of the key aspects. I would like to start by actually presenting you a little bit about our strategy at Business Finland, because we have a brand new strategy. We just made it public, and we have a new CEO for 1 year who has been working hard with us to get this ready. So we believe that Finland is defining the future in this field and in many things. That's our strategic key message. We want to generate prosperity for Finland by accelerating our customers' sustainable growth globally. So our task at Business Finland is really the well-being of companies and research, and therefore the ecosystem and society. So we have 3 angles to the topic: economic growth. We want to reach globally thriving companies among our customers. We also want to create a society which is productive and doing well. We also want to be sustainable in what we do. So be developers of solutions which are not only for the next year or taking the shortcut to the competitiveness, but they need to be sustainable. And competitiveness. So we need to be able to find our strengths and compete and provide an attractive and resilient business landscape for our companies and for the companies who are coming to Finland from abroad. So that's the way how we believe that we can create world-class success stories. And if we think about what are the things where, and sorry, I'm struggling a little bit, so hiding the one of the bars here. So how do we fit into the picture of the innovation funding and services for companies in Finland? So Academy of Finland, under the Ministry of Education, is doing a lot of good stuff in the basic research side. Business Finland is providing services for companies and research organizations in terms of applied research, business R&D, and also internationalization services. So we provide funding in form of grants and loans. We also support companies for international growth, researchers to reach out to international research networks and EU calls, for instance. Our internationalization services cover things like advising delegations, events. We try to hunt for market opportunities for the companies. And we work in form of programs quite often when we see that there is a need for a wider amount of companies or researchers to find each other and network, so that we create competitive ecosystems. Some numbers. So last year, our funding applied by the companies was almost $1 billion, so about 850 million euros. And we awarded that for the amount of 570 million. And you can see here that quite a long part of that goes to companies, and then also some part to startups and SMEs, especially because we see that maybe the biggest growth potential is there. However, we were also thinking that we want to encourage the large companies, the leading companies in the ecosystem, companies like Nokia, Metsä Group, and Neste, for instance, who were chosen to be so-called locomotive companies, leading companies for funding. So we launched a competition, and these three were chosen to get some extra funding, so that they need to also find partners in the ecosystems and pull the smaller players with them and innovate together with significant future challenges. Example being Nokia with the trailblazing 5G industrial solutions. I have there the link if you want to read a bit more of that later on. And now if we think about where are we as Finland in terms of our approach to a safe and secure society. So we want to make the world connected, intelligent, convenient, also for the people and the companies and the research organizations to be. There will be new kind of digital solutions, business models, ways of working. And we are pretty sure that we are on the right path in digitalization, in transforming industries to be also truly competitive on global markets and work with our partners in a sustainable way. So we strive for smart, safe, and sustainable society as Finland. If we think about the building blocks of the Finnish approach and where we are in terms of digitalization. So the digital services, as you know, in Finland are fairly advanced already. We have good examples of digitalization for private sector and for public sector, for instance, taxation, getting more and more digital. We are pretty clever in that, and we've been also getting lots of questions from abroad that how Finland, how have you been doing this? How do you get the public and private working together so that you have these great services and also data banks, for instance? So our digital infrastructure is quite advanced. We have open platforms. We are sharing data. The cities are quite active in that area already, and that enables new kind of business models too. Our connectivity networks, AI, and several other technologies are a good basis for the digital services in our society. Mobility as a service area, built environment with smart buildings, trust also in many of the new initiatives built in, energy with water and waste, so smart grids, and how is the whole critical infra built digitally in a safe way are some things we are working with very much. Many of you already now know about the digital education. So Finland being a poster child often for the education field, also new kind of digital health concepts, even travel, especially this year, has had to develop itself further toward the digital. Also manufacturing, going much more to the digital world. We heard about the 5G earlier, so 5G networks in industrial environments will be bringing new kind of solutions. And smart port concepts. There are interesting initiatives, for instance, around the 5G and the smart port area in Oulu area. One of our research and innovation big projects is about that one. So when everything is connected in Finland, from traffic lights to the electricity, infrastructure, and so on, So we also noticed that we are dependent on many things. Safety and security is getting more and more important. And that's why it needs to be thought from the beginning. So you need to build the security to the design of products, services, and solutions. You can't add it later on only on top of what you are doing. Why are we so good at Finland, or why are we in good position to do this also in a smart way? We recently studied the Finnish cybersecurity companies, and we made a little survey last spring, and we got great response from the companies themselves. And we also worked with the VTT and Finnish Information Security Cluster, the umbrella organization. And we figured out that in addition to being very smart in technical things, so in Finland, you know, the availability of the latest technologies is top notch according to World Economic Forum. We are the most stable country in the world. Digital competitiveness is very high. And if you look at the amount of patents, for instance, or R&D intensity, we are among the most innovative countries in the world. And you can see this also among the cybersecurity companies and researchers in Finland. In addition, we thought that it's really important to understand that we have been one of the very first countries in the whole world where you have the cybersecurity strategy on national level, very sound regulatory frameworks, and the public, private, and companies are playing well together. So that's a great basis for innovating further. We chose also some of the research areas to be mentioned in our recent publication about the cybersecurity. Finland is especially strong in areas like identity and access management, and that's being also researched further actively. Security of autonomous systems and traffic, also network security. One of the latest ones being quantum safe cryptography. Of course, because of our long heritage in the telecom sector, so beyond 5G communication security. And all cyber ranges, trainings, simulations, for instance, what UVSecTech is doing, the Jyväskylä guys in the security field are really top of the world class. And you can see here that we have so many great universities and research institutions like Aalto and many others, Oulu, Tampere, Turku, active in this field, that we can be proud of them. As Business Finland, 1.5 years ago, we were thinking that really these signals about the importance of trust and the requests we are getting from abroad and from our own ecosystem are good enough reason for us to really have a bit more emphasis on the topic of trust. So we started the Digital Trust Finland program. It's a 5-year program working very closely with the cybersec companies, critical communications companies, and fintechs, among others. Also research organizations in Finland and abroad. We have reserved funding for innovation projects yearly and during these 5 years. And ultimately, we want to really be really strong and create new ecosystems for these companies and businesses and the businesses they work with. If I'm thinking of the short-term activities we are doing, so we have to increase the awareness, both in Finland and abroad, about how good our companies and research is, and we need to create new partnerships also with foreign markets. Because in the silo in Finland, we are nothing, we need to be international. So in the cybersec brochure, you can find it from the link on this material. So you can find actually descriptions of the ecosystem, our strengths, and we are actually covering the whole product range, I would say, of the cybersecurity. So from identifying threats to detecting and protecting, responding and recovering to them very well. We have more than 60 companies described with their strengths there, and they are proof that we have all the means to create more trust in the society. Another aspect we work with is the public safety. So that means mission critical communications, even disaster management. And in that field, Finland is covering the whole value chain, from networks to middleware and software to services and devices. And that's pretty unique. And in this field, all these players are working very tightly together. So we even share same communication networks and solutions with the authorities, different authorities, comparing to some more developing countries where you might see, every authority having their own solutions, even communicating via text messages in some cases. So this kind of knowledge we want to bring out to the international markets. If I'm thinking of the long-term things we are doing and where our companies are also participating and the research organizations, we launched an innovation challenge last spring in Finland. And we wanted to put extremely much emphasis on the cross-cutting themes, so industrial solutions and cybersecurity, our critical infrastructure, so maybe energy networks and providers, and also other parts of the critical infra. Critical communications, what does it mean when AI is coming there? So what should the police in their systems, for instance, be ready to use in the future? Technology development of cyber in general. And also one of the key topics for us was quantum computing and cybersecurity. So we brought companies from the starting quantum computing ecosystem in Finland together with the cybersec companies, and that was very useful for both the industries, I would say, and we are seeing already new initiatives being born from there. Why we did this kind of a challenge where we asked for new idea papers? So we wanted to see new innovation projects being born. And we for instance, want to get also inputs to the European-wide innovation calls, for instance, such as Horizon Europe or alike. And ultimately, this long-term thinking is helping us to stay ahead of the competition and succeed. I have two examples here for you about what we call co-innovation projects, which are almost like seeds of ecosystems or accelerating parts of ecosystems. These co-innovation projects typically have the length of about 2 years. At the end of the project, you don't yet have ready-made new products, but you are proving a point, making a proof of concept, for instance. You have a mutual problem between several companies, typically in the range of 5 to 10. And quite often also some research, or you have to have their research organizations. And these all come together to solve a problem. And priority program has been there now for about a year and will be another year. And what they do is pretty unique globally. They are actually studying how the commercial 5G technology can be complementing public authorities' communication needs, so the private networks and devices, so that you really reach ultimate solution in some areas where you might not have, for instance, one of these networks. And the expected outcomes are stronger ecosystems. In the next phase, also actual products, international business, and new capabilities in this top-notch field where Finland, I dare to say we are the best in the world. So where we already are good, so we need to stay ahead in the future too. Then another very, very interesting project. I would say this is a strategic project for Finland, and also even in larger scale, is post-quantum crypto. So if you look at the brands on the right-hand side, so you can see the leading cybersecurity companies and all the key universities, VTT, also some public sector actors being as guiders, guiding the work for their part, Traficom and DDVA and Defense Forces. So the project is aiming to understand how Finland can prepare for quantum era. We need to have our cryptographical solutions ready for completely new kind of computing, and the solutions of the companies in several fields going forward. You might think that it's a long way till the quantum computers come, but unless we start the way today, we are late. Next, I want to raise actually some questions for you guys, because you might have been thinking this already. So now when we are in the pretty open platform economy, and we have distributed sets of microservices, and the trust is important too in this new kind of environment. So we need to think things a little bit different way maybe than sometimes earlier. When we share data, the key is that unless you share it, it doesn't create much value. So it needs to be shared. And one man's trash is another one's treasure, you could say. So some data for one service providers might not be that valid, but what if somebody else would be able to use the almost like byproduct of another one's solution? If you're traveling from Helsinki to Tampere or vice versa, you might have one mission, but maybe on your way to do that, you could provide good for somebody else too. Then questions what we have been asking ourselves is that in this kind of an environment, when you have wide set of cooperating partners with shared services, we already know for a long time, like Uber or Airbnb and so on. So there might also new kind of error possibilities and new kind of risks. Jarno earlier said that, can you trust the partners? How do you know that? How do you verify that in the service network of open platform economy? And how do you know who to work with? Who has the data? Who can use it and how? What are the rules? Is the data current, what you rely on? We also have to deal with things which are bringing a lot of good, but may sometimes feel also that are they limiting somebody's business, but I believe mostly for the good. So GDPR, my data. Can you in your own country, for instance, trust the authorities who are dealing with solutions and frameworks for these kind of concepts? And when you have microservices, services as a collection or dependent of each other. So what happens to the system performances when you suddenly have several services relying on each other and the quality? And finally, how about, for instance, third-party services and regulated software, very regulated, for instance, in Europe, so healthcare. If you are using AI in these kind of solutions, which by default is developing very quickly all the time, and you should have tested solutions in your use, how does this work? So I don't have solutions and answers to all these questions, but there are some which I've been thinking, and I know some of my colleagues in the team have been thinking, and I think you should be thinking too. But Finland is doing pretty good in many of these building blocks in this kind of an open platform economy. We are doing proof of concepts, and we are, I would say, almost in the go-to-market phase with many key building blocks that create additional trust to this environment. So platform and network for digital identities, sharing verifiable content. There is, for instance, institution called Findi.org. SISU-ID is dealing with authentication solution for digital identities, because you need to have consent when you are sharing your data. You all know about the fair data economy and what Sitra has been working with, mydata.org. Ideally, you should be able to decide and know what's happening to your data. And also organizational data. how is that used? What kind of solutions and rule books are used for that, especially in the open platform economy? And everything should, of course, be cybersecurity, and the privacy should be on the level we want it to be. And I'm coming to the end of the presentation very soon. So a couple of thoughts. We are not alone with this dilemma or with the questions. In September, some of you noticed that President Ursula von der Leyen actually made a State of the Union speech. And you'll find the link at the bottom of the presentation to that one. She emphasized quite heavily some points that we must make this Europe's digital decade. We must kind of step forward again and start leading and get some more sovereignty to what we are doing and how we are doing between East and the West and on this globe. She emphasized the right to privacy and connectivity, freedom of speech, free flow of data, and the importance of cybersecurity. You can see this also in some of the coming European innovation calls. And we really must be bold and lean forward, because otherwise we fail in the game. Some areas where we should focus, which she brought up, were data. There are a lot of talks about AI and how data is used. There is even the European data strategy from earlier this year. And one interesting initiative, I will show on the last slide a bit more about that one, is the European Cloud Initiative called Gaia-X. The second area we should focus on is technology, the AI part, and for instance, the digital European identity for the citizens, because that will enable and boost the digital services to be used and the platforms. And finally, the infrastructure in Europe. So Europe is actually investing a lot of money to supercomputers and also to the next generation microprocessor, which allows increasing data volumes to be used energy efficiently and securely. So we often talk only about the software layer, but unless we think all the way down to the lowest level of hardware too, we can't talk about security completely. So the final collaboration, what's happening, I mentioned, or final slide, is about the infrastructure for European data space. There already have been initiatives like Industrial Data Space Association is driving, so maybe more from research angle, how is the data used in industrial context. But now we have also the Gaia-X, which is maybe coming more to the commercial and business context. The European Data Strategy was published in February. And Gaia-X initiative was started about a year ago in cooperation by France and Germany. And really, I guess the ultimate thinking there is that we want to create a bit more sovereignty and independence by also having our solutions for federated cloud. The initiative is not starting from scratch, so it's using existing solutions as much as possible. If you go to the web pages and have a look, so you can see that there are already more than 300 companies who try to all figure out where the business model is for this one, how should they be involved, what kind of use cases there are for different industries, what's the architecture, and really, really big players from for instance, Germany and France. The ministries for industrial side in Germany and France are the patrons for the effort. So the blessing, and as you could see from the Ursula von der Leyen's speech, are on a pretty high level also politically. Foundation to be managing this effort has been established in Belgium in September. And as Finland, we are really just trying to learn more and get our companies as well informed of this initiative as possible, also the research institutions. And VTT is working with Business Finland and the Ministry of Economic Affairs and also the Ministry of Communication to be really linked to this core team working with the initiative. So with these words, I want to thank you guys and give the floor back to Jarno.
Thank you very, very much, Kirsi. And I have to say that even if I know quite of many activities what you are doing in Business Finland and in this whole field, I have to say that your activities are huge at the moment in many ways. One thing what has come to my mind in several lectures during this public lecture series is that when we are looking at the future, we are talking about the technology, the revolutionary development of it, but of course we need humans, especially skilled humans, what we are trying to educate here in our university as well. Do you have any greetings to our students? What kind of skills in technology, when you are looking to the future, that kind of future what you just described, what kind of skills are needed especially?
I think, as you know, so for instance, in the cybersecurity field, there is a huge lack of different levels of talent. So we should both be able to kind of re-educate and provide basic level training for some people, but we should definitely get more talent from abroad. But that's a hugely interesting area, and it's also mixing to different other industries. So you have to have understanding and for instance about the industrial context and not keep these on separate tracks. Yes. So whether it's a software developer or whether it's a data analyst or so on, I think there's a wide range of roles to be filled. I would personally, coming from more like I'm not an engineer, even though I've been working with them my whole life. So I think it's extremely important to look at the end customer view and so understand these different aspects. So business and technology regulation and sometimes also timing in the solutions quite often. So.
Absolutely. So what would you say, presenting all these different projects and issues what is ongoing at the moment, which one will be the success story for Finland? What is your best guess at the moment?
Well, it's sort of I'm so excited sometimes when I talk with these hugely intelligent guys working with the quantum side and the cryptographic solutions. So, and you can almost feel like, well, my background was at Nokia. So when we started doing the mobile devices and created the first smartphones, so you just know that if you put effort and push forward in some field, you have ways to do something great. And I think we are in that phase if we do it right with a potential quantum ecosystem, which is growing, and mix it with some other industries like the cyber. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's my personal bet at the moment.
That's very good guess. Very well said. Jere Kaiku. Jere, if you can hear me, you wrote about the tech companies, and I think that's a pretty big issue at the moment. Are we going to have that kind of big global tech companies to succeed with the competition, especially with the companies from the United States and China? Do you really think, Kirsi, that we have that kind of possibility here in Europe?
I think we do. And we need to, of course, concentrate our forces and efforts to our strengths. And that's one of the reasons why we also need to work together. And we are doing that now in these co-innovation projects. We are trying to do that also in export projects. So if we only do it so that one small company alone is trying to reach out to the world, I don't think we are as strong. But if we can find good partnership models, also with the parties abroad, so then we are stronger.
I agree. Very wisely said. Okay. Hey, thank you very much, Kirsi. Excellent lecture. It was nice
Thank you,
seeing
guys.
you and hearing you as well. And good luck with all those activities what you are having.
I have a feeling we'll be seeing many of us in this call also later on.
I am sure about it.
Thank
you
you
very much, Kirsi.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for attending this week's public lecture series. And we are not having the next lecture next week. The next lecture is after a few weeks, so check the schedule for that. But stay healthy and see you then. Thank you very much.